Hi everyone, this is Haley from Cruise Blog. This spring, I embarked on one of the most unique cruise sailings I've ever been on, a 12-night transatlantic voyage on board the Norwegian Epic from the United States over to Europe. The cruise consisted of 11 days at sea and only one port stop, making it the longest stretch I've ever spent at sea. Prior to the journey, I was curious to see what 11 days in the middle of the Atlantic Sea on board a cruise ship would be like. Would I find it relaxing or boring? Come along with me as I detail every aspect of what it's like to go on a transatlantic cruise and whether I found it to be too many days at sea or not. First up, the embarkation process and the itinerary. For this voyage, I embarked on the Norwegian Epic at Port Canaveral in Florida. Throughout the 12 days, the ship would traverse the rocky waves of the Atlantic Ocean and make its way over to Rome, Italy, where the voyage would end. Originally, this itinerary was scheduled to make stops at Gibraltar, United Kingdom, and Alicante, Spain. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, one of these port visits had to be canceled. Arriving at Port Canaveral on embarkation morning, I was shocked to discover the longest line that I've ever experienced so far in all of my cruise travels. Boarding the Norwegian Epic at Port Canaveral took over 2 hours. Once I was on board, I was able to make my way to my stateroom and acquaint myself with my new home at sea for the next 12 nights. For this sailing, I was traveling by myself and stayed in one of Norwegian Epic's exclusive studio staterooms. This cruise was the longest amount of time I've spent on board one ship, as well as the longest solo trip I've ever taken, by sea or by land. Because of this, I brought some essential items with me to make my stay more comfortable. In addition to my laptop for work, I also packed my Kindle for afternoons hanging out on board reading, as well as a blanket from home to make my stateroom comfortable and cozy. This cruise was my second time staying in one of Norwegian's studio staterooms. Their innovative studio staterooms are designed for individuals traveling alone or who wish to have a smaller stateroom all to themselves, making them one of the leading names in the cruise industry for solo cruising. Along with exclusive amenities and special access to the studio lounge, staying in the studio staterooms allows guests the opportunity to meet new friends should they wish to. Additionally, guests staying in studio staterooms can earn multiple points per night towards their next Latitude reward tier, Norwegian Cruise Line's loyalty and reward program. Next up, my first days on board. The first days on the ship were a novelty. It is always exciting getting to explore a new cruise ship for the first time. Figuring out where everything is on board and discovering all of the amenities is one of the fun parts of any cruise experience. Norwegian Epic has an interesting reputation for being one of the worst rated ships in Norwegian Cruise Line's fleet. It is, after all, the only ship in the cruise line's Epic class. Because of this, I was intrigued to discover exactly how this ship is different from the other Norwegian Cruise Line ships that I've sailed on previously. I quickly discovered that this ship is quite different in terms of its layout and design. Something much different, for instance, was the lack of outdoor space on board. Aside from the pool and Spice H2O areas, there is no waterfront or ocean boulevard. These spaces are familiar to many Norwegian travelers who have been on ships such as Norwegian Getaway, Norwegian Viva, and Norwegian Encore. I did discover that Norwegian Epic has my favorite version of Spice H2O, however. With great views of the back of the ship, plenty of lounge chairs to enjoy a beautiful sunset, a large outdoor bar, 2 hot tubs, a small pool, Spice H2O on board Norwegian Epic is one of the best in the fleet. Moreover, Norwegian Epic seemed to feel more crowded than other Norwegian ships. There was, for example, a wait nearly every evening for the main dining restaurants. One of the reasons for the ship feeling busier could be due to the transatlantic itinerary. More days at sea meant that guests were in the common areas of the ship more often than on a port-intensive itinerary. After exploring the ship and getting myself acquainted with the Norwegian Epic, I settled into a routine on board and enjoyed the peace that could be found. Additionally, I was able to discover some of my favorite places on board, such as the Ice Bar, one of the most unique venues on Norwegian Epic. By the time that days 8 and 9 rolled around, I had seen and explored every corner and amenity on board Norwegian Epic and had developed a routine. Norwegian Epic has a great gym on board. I found that the mid-afternoons seem to be the busiest on board. The freedom of many sea days during a cruise is that guests have the ability and opportunity to relax and do as they please during their vacation. All without the pressure of many port days. A transatlantic cruise can be one of the most relaxing itineraries. I was able to find some relaxing spots on board the ship, a great reading spot, as well as a peaceful place to get some work done and watch the waves. Next up, the disappointment of a canceled port. After 9 sea days, Norwegian Epic was scheduled to make its first port stop in Gibraltar, United Kingdom. However, early in the morning on the day of the scheduled visit, the cruise director and the ship's captain made an announcement over the ship's intercom system, saying that they would not be docking. Unfortunately, during our Atlantic Ocean crossing, Norwegian Epic had experienced some issues with one of its engines, and it had been operating at a slower speed than normal. Because of this, Norwegian Epic could not make it into port at Gibraltar on time. Cruise port visits are strictly scheduled, and oftentimes cruise captains must plan their schedules down to the very minute. Because of this, it unfortunately meant that we had to skip one of our 2 scheduled ports for this itinerary. While we did get to sail through the Strait of Gibraltar, which was an incredible experience, many guests on board were quite disappointed. Things do happen, and while port cancellations are possible, Norwegian Cruise Line usually does their best job to make things right. Cruise ports are usually only canceled because of safety reasons or for reasons that the ship's captain deems absolutely necessary. Next up, plenty of time to explore. With 10 days at sea turning into 11, I can now say that I have spent nearly 2 weeks at sea on a cruise. I had more than enough time on board to explore the ship itself, including the various entertainment options. The entertainment on board Norwegian Epic was great and consisted of many different kinds of shows for guests to see. Additionally, guests could catch comedic acts, live game shows, a hypnotist performance, and live music performed nightly all over the ship. I was able to see all of these entertainment types for myself on board and was pleasantly surprised that Norwegian Epic had plenty planned on board for guests when it came to activities and shows to keep them entertained. Next up, things I did not expect. Something I did not expect was just how much freedom I could feel on a transatlantic cruise. I was able to sleep in on mornings that I wanted to, work out at the gym, and spend an hour reading in a comfortable chair by a window with ocean views, all without feeling guilty that I was missing out on something on board or an exciting port of call. A transatlantic cruise allows guests to truly slow down and enjoy the ship itself, whereas with other cruise itineraries, there may not be a lot of time to simply take in the views or explore the ship. As someone who enjoys history, I was also excited about the prospect of making an Atlantic crossing, as many others throughout history have done. This was something that I really enjoyed and reflected on, and I'm excited to have checked off my bucket list. Next up, the thrill of taking a ship across the Atlantic Ocean versus a plane. Along the lines of appreciating that ship travel is how mankind has traveled for a millennium, there is a special thrill that comes with crossing the Atlantic Ocean by ship rather than an airplane. The day that the Norwegian Epic began its sailing and we sailed away from the shores of Port Canaveral, we headed out towards the open ocean, with land only in sight after 10 days. This was a bit thrilling and was definitely one of the most adventurous cruise sailings I have ever been on. Being able to sail from the United States to Europe on board a cruise ship means that you can enjoy an exciting and relaxing vacation on the way to exciting destinations. And now, what you've all been waiting for. Was 10 days at sea too many? My overall answer is it depends on the traveler. As with any cruise ship and cruise itinerary, it all comes down to personal preferences and desires. If you are someone who enjoys a more active vacation filled with lots of activities and sightseeing, 10 days at sea would probably be too many. However, if you are someone who is looking for a true opportunity to relax on a cruise, then 10 days at sea may sound like the perfect vacation to you. I highly recommend browsing all of the potential cruise itineraries you may be interested in, and then making a decision based on exactly what you envision your cruise vacation to be. Personally, I really enjoyed my transatlantic sailing, but going forward, I think that when booking a family cruise or a cruise with my husband, we would pick an itinerary with more port visits. While 10 days at sea allows passengers to thoroughly explore the ship, it can also become rather boring if you are someone who enjoys an active vacation. Overall, would I do a transatlantic cruise again? My answer is yes. Transatlantic cruising is a unique experience, and I would be interested in trying it out for a second time. Ideally, I would like to do a future transatlantic cruise with my husband, family, or friends, and not alone next time. While cruising solo can be a fun experience, I personally prefer sharing the memories of cruise travel with loved ones. The next time I go on a transatlantic cruise, I would rather pick an itinerary with more port stops along the way, or fewer days at sea. While I enjoyed the ability to do exactly as I please and have the freedom to relax, I think a week-long transatlantic cruise would be the perfect length and balance of sightseeing and relaxation. I'm very grateful for the opportunity and ability to try out the unique experience of sailing on a transatlantic itinerary. And so that concludes our video on Is 11 Days at Sea Too Many? We really hope that you enjoyed watching this video and that our experience on a transatlantic cruise was insightful and helpful. If you enjoyed this video, we would love if you would like it, subscribe, and drop us a comment down below. Thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.